All right, welcome to Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your gracious host, Richie Mars, and I have another repeat guest here today. You might remember him from the debut episode, the most listened to episode, so he's still the champion in that regard. You know him as Scott Eisenberg from Shoot the Flick, but over here, since it's his second time, I'm going to give him an old little wrestling name. He is now, since we're covering a sequel, he is Scotty Sequel. Scotty, thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you very much, and love talking about sequels. I have reasons for covering this one. I know people who, oh, why aren't you talking about the first one? The first one's arguably one of the greatest matches in history.
When I was texting you and I told you, hey, it's going to be WrestleMania month and I want to have you on, are you interested? You're like, yeah, of course I'm interested. And I always thought we were just going to cover the third Rock Austin one. And you said, yeah, we could do that. And then you pivoted towards Shawn Michaels Undertaker 2. And that really interested me. What was your fandom like during the 2010s? Because you were more towards the 90s and the 2000s. How did your fandom look a decade later?
It was very minuscule. I was basically out.
Mm.
Like I've always followed in the periphery. Like it's always been like even to this day, like I'm not gonna watch Raw, SmackDown, NXT every night or every time it's on, but if something catches my eye, I will watch. And WrestleMania 25, when I heard it was gonna be HBK, who is one of my favorites, and The Undertaker, who is also one of my favorites, in a match, I was like, that's exciting. And then you hear like they're doing it again. You're like, I'm on board. Let's go.
I was very much the same way when the first time around it was happening, WrestleMania 25, Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. I remember my friend, Don't Follow David, friend of the pod, he wanted to see the Hardy Boys because he was a big Hardy Boys fan. He was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a great match." But I was always like, I can't wait for Shawn Michaels and Undertaker. And I remember him asking me why. And these guys haven't touched since '98. And with all that, with Shawn retiring and then unretiring, and the Undertaker being a constant fixture of WWE, and them being on separate brands, Shawn was always on Raw, Undertaker was always on SmackDown. He could be at Raw at times when he was on Raw when Shawn Michaels wasn't active, etc., etc. But now you have these two, for lack of a better term, cornerstones of WWE finally facing off at WrestleMania 25. And the buildup was, well, this match sells itself. It's the Lord of Darkness, the Undertaker from Hell, from Shawn Michaels, the person who's descending from the heavens. And that was essentially the buildup. And the buildup was Shawn Michaels has never lost to the Undertaker, which was true at that point when Shawn Michaels was a major star. As you were saying before, you're 1 foot out the door when it comes to being a constant watcher of WWE. How much of that is contributed to Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker still being in WWE to keep your interest?
You always connect to the people you grew up watching. And these two, because they were there for decades. Oh, Michaels is fighting whoever this is. Okay, yeah, I'll definitely give it a watch. Taker's fighting Batista. Okay, yeah, I'll definitely. And it always introduced you to new guys and new matches and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of how that went. When you get connected to some wrestlers, you're like, that's my guy, and I'll always just keep an eye out for him. Just because these guys have been around so long, that's what keeps you in it. You always enjoy when Austin shows up randomly, stuns a couple people. You're like, yeah, that's awesome. I'll watch that clip of Austin stunning people. The Rock comes back, shoots a bazooka on the main stage. But the fact that these guys have been doing this for so long on such a high level, there were reports for years that they hated each other, despised each other. And yet they could sit there and put on at the ages of 44 and 45, arguably the greatest match in some people's minds in history, is insane.
Going back to their past animosity, this was during the bad Shawn Michaels era where he was having his personal problems, drug use, etc. And Shawn Michaels wrote in his autobiography what Taker told him was, "You deliver in the ring, Shawn, that's enough for me." So it's great that the perception of Shawn Michaels, rightfully earned for being a difficult problem back then, and for the locker room leader to say, "Hey, I know I don't really like you, but you show up to work and you're probably one of the best." And that's coming from the guy who could essentially assassinate one's career.
Oh yeah.
So it's amazing how they just didn't get along but created magic in the ring, like you said. And this is how I compare WrestleMania 25 Shawn Michaels Undertaker to their rematch at WrestleMania 26. WrestleMania 25 is Avengers Infinity War. WrestleMania 26 is Avengers Endgame.
That's definitely a good comparison. The way I always look at it, because actually I even rewatched both these matches before we did this. WrestleMania 25 is a much cleaner match, but WrestleMania 26 tells a better story. They did such a good job with this build. I almost want to say this is the better match because it meant more.
And speaking of the build, we should probably get to the build, shall we?
Yes, let's do it.
Like all good stories, when you accept an award winning match, you start at an award show. And this is where this rivalry begins, or begins again. It is the Slammy Awards. And Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker won for Match of the Year. Shawn Michaels comes out to accept, and he says, "I'm very proud of the work that Undertaker and I did at WrestleMania 25, and thank you for this award." He begins to walk off stage. He pauses, and he's looking at the award in his hand. He rushes back to the stage, and he says, "You know what, something, Undertaker? I can beat you. So right here, right now, I'm throwing out the challenge. You and me, WrestleMania, one more time." And the crowd's cheering, and everyone's losing their minds. What did you think about this announcement? Because we're in December, WrestleMania is in April.
Well, okay. So WWE has had an issue recently about long-term storytelling. And that's kind of been a thing that everyone usually complains about, like, what's the long-term story? When you look at something like AEW, what they did with Hangman Adam Page and his whole story to eventually beat Kenny Omega, that was, what, a year and a half long storyline, basically? WWE hasn't done that in a long time. So you're like, can we really make this build last from December to Mania? There was another thing Michael said here that I think plays an important part to the match. And he also says, "I made one mistake," which is the moonsault into the tombstone that ended the match. He's like, "I made one mistake, and this leads to something I'll talk about later, but I want to put a pin here." He's like, "I made one mistake, but I can beat you." And Michael sells it.
Yeah, you see the emotion on his face, the frustration that, the cocky Heartbreak Kid knew he had The Undertaker where he wanted him, and he didn't get the job done. And I'm so glad that you brought up the Hangman Adam Page storyline, because I wanted to touch upon this with you. It's almost like not just WWE, just wrestling in general has a lack of, I don't want to say storylines, I want to say story arcs, where the story arcs over storylines that are happening. Because with Hangman Adam Page, he had the tag team with Kenny Omega, with the frustration with the Young Bucks. And then later, all that stuff, losing the titles with FTR, and then him trying to find his way with the Dark Order. And Hangman Page was still in storylines while still trying to fight this thing off his back, trying to chase the dragon, if you will, until he finally gets that moment with Kenny Omega. Now, Shawn Michaels said in an interview with Inside the Ropes, a stage show, that Michael Hayes, who's a producer with WWE, came to him and he said, we're always thinking about next year's WrestleMania, and we've never done a return match before. So, how would you feel putting your career on the line with Undertaker? And Shawn Michaels actually was thinking about the first match, and he was saying, that would be a good match to end it on. And his wife said, we're ready to have you home. It's up to you if you want to retire. So Shawn Michaels was mewing it over, and Michael Hayes was saying, you don't have to stay retired, which is just an idea we're throwing out there, which is the most wrestling thing ever, to do a retirement match and then come back after the retirement match.
Well, how many times has Ric Flair technically retired? Ric
Terry
Flair, I
Funk,
think, is retired
Mick
five
Foley,
times. Yeah.
all of them.
Mick, you're fired. Okay,
Everybody comes back, including Shawn Michaels, and we're gonna get to that a little bit later too.
Though I will
But
say, when he comes back
Mhm.
without the hair, it always throws me. It threw me off for like the
Oh,
first
dude, it
couple
was
times.
so trippy. Like, he would just be wearing the cowboy hat, and I'm like, all right. I saw him like cut the ponytail off, but it was so jarring seeing bald Shawn Michaels. Like, I
Oh
cannot
yeah,
get used to it.
like it works for Triple H, but yeah, for Michaels, it was just a weird disconnect.
He looked like Doctor Evil.
That's true.
It's the night of the Slammies, and Shawn Michaels says, "All right, let's do it." And the show's live. The show's on the air. And Vince is like, "What, you want to do it? You want to do it, pal?" And Shawn Michaels is like, "Yeah, why not? We should probably set it up here if this is going to be the end goal." So he's trying to get it approved before he goes on stage to actually say this stuff. And Undertaker found out while he's at his house that he's like, "Well, I guess I'm working with Shawn at Mania." And that's how arguably one of the greatest WrestleMania matches was planned by not being planned.
Hey man, sometimes that's the best thing. And when he throws out the challenge, yeah, you're excited. You're like, Michaels always puts on a show. Taker at Mania is always a show.
Shawn Michaels is one half of the unified tag team champions with Triple H. Undertaker's the current world heavyweight champion on SmackDown. So they're entrenched in their own rivalries and their own stories. And here's this other story happening saying, hey, here's what we have planned for the future. And us as the fans, we don't know which direction they're going to go with it. And I think that's the best feeling. Being a fan is not armchair quarterbacking. Oh, they're going to do this. Oh, this story's going here and then it goes here. And then you just kind of know where it's going. But this one, we really didn't know it was coming. We didn't really know what the ramifications were to this story.
That's another thing wrestling has had an issue with the invention of Twitter and wrestling rags and all those, things, because now it's like anytime there's something special,
Hmm.
it gets spoiled before it ever happens. It's so tough. In like we all want to know right away what's going to happen, who's going to be where. And now people take pictures. Oh, John Cena's in Milwaukee. Raw's in Milwaukee. I wonder why John Cena's here. The other thing is like the Slammies are such a throwaway show.
It's a special show just to have a special show.
Most of the times they've done it, no one cares really. It's like, oh yay, we honored the last year. Oh, this could have been, and we have a match or two, and then we're gonna.
Yeah, I'm really glad Daniel Bryan won the Best Beard Award in 2013. That really did help his stock. I believe that's what triggered the Yes movement as well.
Yeah. So it's just like it's one of those shows that no one cares about. And for them to have the balls to start this on the Slammies is hysterical to me.
So now we have Shawn Michaels, who's in DX, who's normally jokey and normally airheaded. Now he's completely changed his demeanor, and now he's serious. And he asks The Undertaker if he accepts the challenge. The Undertaker's in the ring, Shawn Michaels comes out, and Undertaker says, "You're the closest that anybody was to ending the streak. But my answer is no. If you think you could beat me here tonight at Raw." And everyone cheers, and Shawn Michaels says no. The next time I face you is at WrestleMania. And he says, I know what I have to do. I have to win the Royal Rumble and then challenge you for your World Heavyweight Championship to get my match back at WrestleMania. How did you think this came off?
The one thing about the Undertaker character is Undertaker has never been the best promo to watch. Like, he's always fun, like, oh, the rest in
He's a
peace.
man of few words.
Exactly. So he's not going to carry a promo segment. But surprisingly, they let him do a lot more here. When he says, I have nothing left to prove to you, Shawn, I beat you. Like, we're done. But if you want to fight, I'm down to fight. But Shawn's like, no, we have to do this. There's only one place to do this. You can't give this away on Monday Night Raw. That's probably something Vince would say. You can't give that away on Monday night. Are you crazy?
He wanted to give away Brock Lesnar and Stone Cold Steve Austin on Raw.
That's true.
Especially around this time where Shawn Michaels and Undertaker were thriving in. We were knee deep in that PG era where
Yeah.
wrestling was learning how to be PG. Do you think stars from that new generation attitude era found it hard to acclimate to the quote unquote PG era?
Well, yeah, I think some of them did. I think some of them fit in nicely. Like Cena, I think fit in nicely
He was
to
a good
that.
spokesperson for it, yeah.
I think it took certain people longer to get into it, especially the people who had been around for years and years. Like Taker's character, you're not getting the Ministry of Darkness Taker in the PG era.
Whew, no.
Like, he's not putting Stephanie on a cross and like lighting it on fire.
It's not a cross, it's a symbol.
It's a sorry. Triple H isn't taking Stephanie to a random wedding chapel and getting her married against her will.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
When you do that, because WWE wanted to clean up its image a little, get some of the younger fans involved, because let's face it, any sport or thing that goes over a long period of time, you want to hook the younger people in because they're the people who are going to watch you for longer.
And that's why this match of Shawn Michaels Undertaker 2, it's a win-win for everybody. Gets the old fans involved, brings the new fans up to speed who just recently watched that Undertaker Shawn Michaels match the year before, and it's a relatable story. The obsession of knowing you could beat this person, it didn't happen, and now you just want another shot at it, and now that shot is being refused to you, and you're like, all right, here's another hurdle. And that other hurdle for Shawn Michaels is the Royal Rumble. But before we get to that, there's one important thing that happens before the Royal Rumble. Bret Hart comes back to the WWE.
That is
And
true.
Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels do not like each other.
No.
Back in the 90s, dare I say, they hated each other.
You
Dare
might say that.
dare I say there was a certain incident in Montreal that happened that gets talked about to death, and I refuse to cover it on this show, so I will not cover it. Let's just say it was not a pleasant time to be Bret Hart. But
Well, it's probably his second worst night as a wrestler ever.
yeah.
The first one being his match with Goldberg.
Oh god, we're not getting into that. So Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, they bury the hatchet. With you being a fan during the time of the peak of the Shawn Michaels Bret Hart rivalry and hatred towards each other, how surreal was it that they're finally, after all these years, burying the hatchet?
Insane. You never thought it was going to happen. Never. Like, there were things you believed in Like, the sky is blue, grass is green. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels will always hate each other. Those were like the tried and true methods of like what is real in life. I do wonder if Bret never got hurt. Like, if that kick to the head didn't end his career, would he still be wrestling? Because he didn't have a style that led to like the injuries. But yeah, to see these two together in the ring after all these years, because I'm sure this was the first time they had been together in a ring. And I do wonder if it was a little for show, if it was, like, oh, we'll bury the hatchet. It'll be like this cool little thing. But like, does Bret really like forgive Michaels? Does he, you know, is it more he hates Vince for the moment? Is it just like time heals all wounds? I can't answer that.
Let's fast forward to the Royal Rumble.
Oh, yeah.
And this is Shawn Michaels' chance to get a shot at The Undertaker. And on the SmackDown before, he actually faced Rey Mysterio. And that night ends with The Undertaker chokeslamming both Shawn Michaels and Rey Mysterio, because Rey Mysterio is facing The Undertaker at the Royal Rumble. Undertaker defeats Rey Mysterio in a very good match, but now it's Shawn Michaels' time.
Yes, as Michael Cole says in announcing, Taker took care of his business. Now it's up to Shawn.
Shawn is a house of fire. He starts eliminating Carlito, the members of Legacy, John Morrison, even his own partner, Triple H. That's
It's
how obsessed he is with getting this match with Undertaker. He will throw out his friend just to get another chance at it.
it's funny because I think this is the second time this year that Shawn Michaels like shocks everybody by switching musicking Triple H. Because I think he does it at Survivor Series as well.
He does, yeah, against that match with Cena.
And Cena's like, oh.
He has the O face,
Yeah.
that shocked Pikachu face. And we're gonna fast forward towards the final four, and it's Shawn Michaels, John Cena, Batista, and Edge. Shawn Michaels and Edge are on the outside. Shawn hits the super kick. Edge goes back inside because of it. And Shawn Michaels is turned around, but Batista is right there behind him, and he's trying to chop at his hands. Batista is chopping at his hands, trying to let go of Michaels' grips, and Michaels is fighting. He's fighting to stay on the apron. And then you see one hand fall off, and then the other hand fall off.
And he's
Shawn
still reaching.
Michaels, as he's going down, it's like Mufasa from The Lion King, trying to grab onto the cliff. He's trying to grab onto the ropes. Shawn Michaels falls down to the ground, and then the camera zooms in on Shawn Michaels' 1,000-yard stared face, just hands in his head. This was his one opportunity to get to The Undertaker, and he failed. And now he's pleading with the referees. He's like, please, you have to let me back in. The ref's like, Shawn, you're eliminated. You're eliminated.
And he just beats
Shawn,
the shit out of him.
yeah, Shawn goes in the referee, and referee Charles Robinson said, Shawn, you're out. You're eliminated. Shawn looks at his hands, and then he just super kicks the referee right out of his boots. He's frustrated because he blew his shot. This was his one chance, and he blew it. What are you feeling in this moment? Do you think Shawn Michaels being eliminated in such a fashion kind of put a damper on Edge's Royal Rumble win? Because he just returned from injury at this night, but now the Rumble match is all about Shawn Michaels not getting his opportunity at The Undertaker.
Does it put a damper on Edge winning? A little bit, but you also have to understand with a match with 30 people, there are many storylines going on at once. I think even like Legacy was feuding at this time. Like, there are a couple of different storylines that are currently going on that it's okay to have this moment of sadness, because then when Edge does win, you're still excited for Edge. And that's just a different storyline going on. You can't just focus on the one storyline in a match like this. So, does it put a little damper? Yeah, of course, because it was such a big thing. Everybody wanted Michaels to win. He's the baby face. He's Shawn Michaels, you know? Like, and you see the way he's like the desperation, the reaching for the rope, the last, like, it's just out of his finger tips. And I almost think you hate Batista more because of it. Like, no, Batista, no.
We don't really see at this time people being so upset over a loss. For example, sometimes when John Cena was champion during this time, he would lose the title and then he would come out the next week on Monday Night Raw smiling. You
Yeah.
know, this one match devastated Shawn Michaels. It scarred him to a point where he feels like not only he could beat The Undertaker, but absolve of his, for lack of a better term, sins of learning, hey, I made one mistake and this is my opportunity. And then he blew his opportunity. But now it's almost like the 5 stages of grief, because now Triple H goes to Shawn Michaels saying, look, Shawn, this is getting ridiculous. You're super kicking referees, you're getting fines, you're lucky to be here. So focus on the match tonight against Randy Orton to qualify for the Elimination Chamber. There are other people to face at WrestleMania. It's not all about The Undertaker. Shawn Michaels hesitates and he's like, maybe you're right. Randy Orton beats Shawn Michaels with a roll up, and Shawn Michaels gets that same glazed look in his eye that he did from the Rumble. And he spirals even more out of control, and he loses his tag team titles in a 3-way elimination match to ShoMiz, which also featured the Straight Edge Society. And he goes backstage. He finds SmackDown general manager Teddy Long, and he says, Teddy, you gotta put me in the chamber match with The Undertaker. If I beat The Undertaker with the world championship on the line, I'm champion. I'll give him a shot at WrestleMania. You just gotta let me go. Gotta let me go to SmackDown. And Teddy's like, the chamber match is already booked. I can't just like put you in there. And Shawn Michaels is so frazzled. Triple H is this what you want, to throw everything away, to throw DX away? And Shawn Michaels says, my career is over. Then he super kicks Teddy Long. Now, there's a lot of things to cover right here. The first thing I want to ask you, what did you think about ShoMiz?
They really did not know what to do whenever Big Show was in a tag team, how to name the team. Jericho, ShoMiz. It's just say the Big Show and Miz. Come on, it's fine. You don't need to give them a fancy name.
What are your opinions on throwaway teams in general? And what I mean throwaway teams, I mean, hey, these two single stars aren't really doing anything, which is ludicrous because Miz is the United States champion at this point, and we're going to just put him in a tag team.
Oh, we don't care about the U.S. title.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like, sometimes it works, and sometimes you're like, wow, that was really exciting. Like Rob Van Dam Kane. Shouldn't work, it worked. Daniel Bryan Kane. Shouldn't have worked, it worked. It's one of those things, like, would I have liked them to do something to make it seem more natural? Yeah, but sometimes you just want to get two people on the card and you throw them together in a random tag team and they have a match and you're like, huh, they actually have good chemistry. Booker T Goldust was a random pairing. Worked. But then, yeah, of course you're going to get, like, other random ones where you're like, why are we doing this?
As we're seeing Shawn Michaels' slow descent into madness, how are you as a fan looking at Shawn Michaels, arguably in the first time in his career, this vulnerable, this obsessed?
It's a desperation. It's hard to actually get right. And you feel for Michaels. You want this to be such a big thing, and you're like, you're sad almost
Mhm.
watching him because you're like, this isn't the HBK I love. Like, but you know that he needs this almost. And it's crazy because I don't think a lot of people could sell this. And I think Michael's history helps him sell this.
He's a tremendous seller of emotion.
Let's face it, he's carrying this feud because that's how he's got to do it. Taker is the goal. Michaels is the one, as the song says, running up the hill.
And that's an interesting point that you made, that this is just a Shawn Michaels storyline. Taker's just a figure in it. Do you think that made the story better because it was just Shawn Michaels playing off this stoic character, or would you like to see more character development for the Undertaker? Because this was at a time where there was no character development for the Undertaker. He was already the Undertaker.
Every time they add to his story or add to his character, it never seems to work well. It really doesn't. I think for Michaels can do this. Michaels, just the way he is personality wise, it makes a lot more sense for him to be the character that is changing. By the way, what would be your dream match for Shawn Michaels?
Oh God.
I have one.
I've always wanted to see Shawn Michaels and Eddie Guerrero.
That would have been a lot of fun. That's actually a very good match. But I think the best match would be Shawn Michaels versus AJ Styles.
That would have been phenomenal. No pun intended. So we fast forward to Elimination Chamber, and Shawn Michaels has been off the grid since his meltdown of losing the tag team titles. So he's not really fixed in the plans for the Elimination Chamber. And now we go to the SmackDown Elimination Chamber for the World Heavyweight Championship. It's going to be The Undertaker defending his World Heavyweight Championship against Chris Jericho, Rey Mysterio, CM Punk, John Morrison, and R-Truth.
Names. I love R-Truth. But, like, God, he doesn't belong. He belongs when he's Ron Killings. Like, when he's Ron Killings, he gets a lot
I
more
loved Ron the
credit.
Truth Killings at TNA.
Like, because he's actually a guy who competes for the heavyweight title over at TNA. WWE never gave him that
Oh,
stage to really.
are we forgetting about Little Jimmy?
Oh, stop with the little Jimmy
No,
nonsense.
no, I'm being serious. Conspiracy R Truth when he turned heel that one
It's
time
hysterical.
was
Hysterical.
lovely, and it should have lasted longer. And there's no truth slander on this podcast. I
Oh, God.
refuse. He is a gem.
This is how you know we're friends because we could just kind of tangent off and tangent back whenever the hell we want.
I'll fix it in post. I'm just gonna be like, oh God, why did we say so much stuff? Before the Elimination Chamber match actually happens, I'm not sure if you know about this. The Undertaker catches fire during his
Oh yeah,
entrance. And he tells the story to the Steve Austin show that a couple weeks before, he told the pyro guy, hey, the flames are coming up a little bit close. And the pyro guy says, it's a draft in the building. Undertaker says, okay. Next night, gets a little bit closer. And before the show, he was contemplating on wearing the kind of like the cape attire, not the coat.
yeah.
But he said, you know what, I should probably wear the coat because I could show off the world title. So he wears the coat, and before he goes out, he dumps another bottle of water on his head. So he walks out, a flame goes right up in front of him, he turns to his right, and then another flame just engulfs him. I have to give him all the credit in the world. If I was set on fire, I would be doing the stop, drop, and roll immediately. This man, this 7-foot behemoth of a man, after just catching fire, almost completely no-sells it, takes his coat off, and goes into the pod. And while he's in the pod, he's asking for bottled waters, as he should, because he has third-degree burns all over himself.
You're watching, like, just in the highlights, I think he dumped like 8 or 9 bottles of water on his body. He must have been drenched in water.
He said his skin was like bubbling. That's how bad the burn was. And when that water hits, not only is it just gonna burn, but it's almost, I feel like it's gonna be like one of those cartoons where the water almost hits and then it dries up because the skin's so hot.
Yeah.
And Chris Jericho said in his book that when he saw this happen and him and Taker were in the ring, he said, "Do you want to change anything?" He's like, "No, man, let's do it." And he's like on the walls and he's like on his like stomach too, and he's all burned up. And after the match, he said to Vince, "Vince, I don't want an apology. I don't want excuses. But if I see him again, I will kill him."
Taker's one of those guys you believe.
The final two are Chris Jericho and The Undertaker. Undertaker hits Chris Jericho with the last ride, and he's signaling for the tombstone. But what is this? Shawn Michaels pops up from under the Elimination Chamber and hits the sweet chin music on The Undertaker. Chris Jericho's looking perplexed. He crawls over to the cover. Chris Jericho's the new World Heavyweight Champion. And Shawn Michaels is standing over The Undertaker. Costed him the World Heavyweight Championship. And this is all part of the plan to get that WrestleMania match.
Well, it's crazy too to think about, because Michaels and Jericho have so much history too. Jericho had a shot at the tag titles, I think, at the Slammies,
Yeah,
and
with Big Show. Yeah.
and Michaels and Triple H got intentionally disqualified, and that was Jericho's rematch. He's like, "Bye, you're going to SmackDown. See you later." But the two, like, that's the thing. Jericho does such a great job showing that these two have such history just by looking at Michaels. Like, Michaels doesn't look at him because he's focused on Taker, but like, it's just a nice little callback.
Yeah, it's a nice callback. It's a nice Easter egg if you were paying attention to the Chris Jericho Shawn Michaels feud a couple of years prior, and how much it shows Shawn Michaels' descent into madness has gone, that he would allow the person he arguably hates the most to capture one of the richest prize in the business just to get his match with The Undertaker. And this is phenomenal character work Shawn Michaels is delivering.
When Michaels cost Undertaker the title, you know, as a fan, you're like, oh, it is on. There is no other method now. This is like the simple thing, like, oh, Taker's now got to beat the shit out of Shawn Michaels. That's how it's got to go now. You're back on the train. The sadness is now turned to anticipation.
The next night on Monday Night Raw, Shawn Michaels comes before a Monday Night Raw crowd and he says, my actions aren't really that complicated. I just want The Undertaker to come out. I've heard he was in the building tonight, and I want to say some things to him. So Undertaker comes out, body covered because it was covered in burns. And Shawn Michaels said, I asked you, I begged you for this match, and you wouldn't let me. So I did what I had to do. You want your revenge. I want you at WrestleMania. Undertaker says, I accept. I don't know why that sounded like Kane when he had the little thingamabobber. I got to work on my Taker. But as Shawn Michaels turns to leave, Undertaker raises the mic up and he says, under one condition. And Shawn Michaels turns back. If you defeat me, you end the streak. I defeat you, your whole career is over. I take your soul. Now the stakes are the highest it's ever been. It's The Undertaker's WrestleMania undefeated streak against Shawn Michaels' entire career. If Shawn Michaels loses, He is finished in WWE. Not really, but that's how we're playing it right now.
Yeah, it's fine.
What is your
This
reaction to this?
shock, because you're right. This is huge. Like, yeah, we know all wrestlers come back, but again, this is a drama. It's a story. Like, it's a soap opera. Wrestling is a giant soap opera. Let's call it what it is.
Mhm.
So, like, oh, this person's dying or this person's leaving the show. Like,
Do, do, do you remember when was like Lita had Kane's baby,
yeah. And
and
Snitsky punted it.
he, he didn't punt the baby; he punted a baby doll.
That
Very different.
represented the baby.
Yeah, well, it wasn't his fault, as he said.
Uh, but
I got
wrestling
into
is
I got into wrestling the right time. Let me tell you.
oh yeah. But
I'm crying, but I didn't
these
mean to be crying.
it's okay.
Ooh.
But these guys, like, it's one of those things. Like, you're still like, oh my god, could Michael's career be over? Like, could it? Like, part of you also thinks maybe like, oh, is Michael's hiding an injury? Maybe.
Mhm.
Like, you always knew about Michael's back problems and because of
Knee problems.
knee
Yeah.
problems and all that time. Like, is he really like calling it quits? And this is just a great way to do it. But you're still like, oh my god, like, and this is the thing about the running up the hill video, because we've referenced it a couple times throughout here, but they do a really good job after this little bit here. They flash Michael's career, like just some of the moments, him jumping off the ladder on Razor, him at him WrestleMania 12 coming down through the rafters, Michael spinning around, like his career, and you're like, versus the streak.
Legitimately, you as a fan, Shawn Michaels' career flashes before your eyes, and we might as well talk about it now. The Shawn Michaels Undertaker video package is up to that song "Running Up That Hill" by Placebo, the cover of the "Running Up the Hill" song. Last time you were on here, we talked about the My Way video package for Rock Austin 2. How does this video package compare to that one? Me personally, I think it's better. What do you think?
They're two different things. They're
Mhm.
two different. The Rock Austin one is meant to get you excited and like it pumps you up. You're like, yeah, let's go. Like, this is like a retrospective almost. These are two guys who are towards the end of their careers, not in the middle of them anymore. So there's so much on the line, but it's emotional.
This video package showed that something was going to come to a head. Either the Undertaker streak, and if you were a fan at that point, knew was a very important
Oh yeah.
thing to have. Just years and years of building up names to defeat at the biggest stage of them all.
So here's a question for you.
Yeah.
In all those names, what's the one name they never bring up when they talk about the streak? There's only one that they never really bring up.
I talked about this on the streak episode, and it's either Bundy or Gonzalez.
It's Giant Gonzalez. They never talk about Giant Gonzalez because it was a count-out victory.
Oh, God. Well, Bundy was a DQ too, so I don't
Bundy
know why
was a
they.
DQ as well, but
Uh,
at least King Kong Bundy is a name. No one really cares about Giant Gonzalez.
dude, you're gonna get me so much hate mail from Giant Gonzalez fans, and then
Oh,
I'm
all of
just
them.
gonna.
Come, know what? Come for me. Bring your Giant Gonzalez love here.
You heard it here first. Go to Scotty's sequel for your Giant Gonzalez needs and hatred. My goodness. You have the streak, and then you have Shawn Michaels' career, who is arguably Mr. WrestleMania. He's the one who usually has the best match of the night on the show. And for this to be the series finale for one of those things, it's a bittersweet tale.
I would say this is probably the second best video package behind My Way, but they do different things.
With My Way, it's more about who's the top dog now. With the running up that hill video, it's who still has that one shot to get the job done. And it's either going to end in a super kick or a tombstone.
Yeah,
Who is the
exactly.
last outlaw of WWE? They announced this match in February, and then they don't really do much build up after that. Like Shawn Michaels will appear on SmackDown, super kick the Undertaker, and Taker will distract Michaels on like the Titantron. But the match is pretty much sold itself.
There is nothing else that really needs to be done. Michaels got what he wanted. He got his match in Mania. And you already know the stakes. Like, you don't need to be reminded of them, really. You know
Mhm.
what's going to happen. Like, you know either Michaels is going to be forced to retire or the streak ends. You don't need reminders.
And this match is the main event of WrestleMania. Now, usually I'm a big proponent of the title has to go on last. Now, we've seen retirement matches before and since that have been in the middle of the show or in the main event in Undertaker's case when he faced AJ Styles at night one at WrestleMania.
Yes.
With this match, I think it was the best decision they could have made to make this show the main event of the show because of last year. That match stole the show, and then
Yeah.
every match after that kind of had a struggle with gaining its footing back. Do you think it was the right decision to make this the main event, or are you the proponent of world title has to go on last?
When you're building a show, I think your goal for a show is to constantly build upwards, to have an upwards trajectory so the fans keep going and getting crazier and crazier as the night goes on. I talk about this when I went to WrestleMania and I saw Kofi Mania happen. I remember when Kofi beats Daniel Bryan, the place went nuts. There are two or three more matches after that. And I give nothing but respect to Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair and Ronda, who was the main event of that night, and Triple H versus Batista, which was also after that match. I think there might have been one more. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head right now. You were so exhausted after that you like I can't I can't keep the emotion going. Like, I've already lost everything. Like, I've spent all my emotions. If you put any wrestler's career and you're like, let me rank wrestlers' careers, you know who's very near the top? Shawn Michaels. No matter what the list is.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, that you got to build to that, because even if the match doesn't deliver like the first one did, which it doesn't, the fans need that to be the end. Because let's say the streak's over. If let's say it went the other way and the streak ended, you're like, oh my god, the streak's over. Like, you're like insane because of that. Or like how it happened, Michael's career ended. Take nothing away from the world championships. They're very important. They probably should have been this match before this, but like, there's so much here.
We're finally here at the match, and they changed this match into a no count out, no disqualification match. And I believe they did this to wash away any fears of there being a screwy finish with a count out or disqualification. They did this specifically to make sure that one, there's a final winner in this feud, there's going to be finality, and two, it gives both participants a little bit more breathing room when it comes to certain spots in the match.
Yes, I think it is so we have a definite winner. I think that is definitely the reason you did this. Is it really taken advantage of? Not really.
Yeah, there are no chair shots, there are no
Low
weapon shots, and
blows.
yeah, it's all about them proving who's the best. What was a point in this match did you go, "Oh wow, Shawn's going to do it. He's going to do it."
The one that last Sweet Chin music, you were like, "Oh my
I
god, he's
agree,
got
yeah.
it! Like he's actually got this." But like and Taker kicking out, like it added to like when Michaels kicked out of the tombstone the first time, and they focused on Taker's like bugged out eyes.
Hmm.
You're like, oh my god, he almost had it. Like you can even see Michaels occasionally like do the thing where he like runs his hands through his hair, and he's like, "What do I have to do to end you?" Like it's just one of those things, and that's the thing. I brought it up earlier, and I'm glad you brought it back here. I almost had you. I almost beat you last time. I wrestled a perfect match because Michaels starts this match almost exactly the same
Going
as
for the
WrestleMania,
leg.
going for the leg, trying to take the Undertaker down, put him in the figure four leg lock. It's almost beat for beat the same as WrestleMania 25, which I don't think unless you watch both matches back to back, you would understand that.
Hmm.
Like that's such good storytelling. Like by these two guys, like to start the match almost the exact same way.
Then we get to the ending portion of the match where Undertaker takes the straps down and he goes for the rest in peace signal, but he stops halfway through because Shawn Michaels is crawling on top of him. And Taker just kind of rolls his eyes in the back of his head, not dead man style, but just like, you gotta be kidding me. And he says, "Stay down, stay down." And Shawn Michaels is a little bit disoriented. He looks in Undertaker's eyes, gives him the throat cut to say rest in peace, smacks the Undertaker. Undertaker bugs out, picks up Shawn Michaels, and hits a jumping tombstone for the 1, 2, 3. Undertaker's streak is intact. Shawn Michaels' career is over. And so is the ending of one of the greatest careers in wrestling history.
Well, the other thing about this moment is it's Michael saying end it the right way. He came in as one of the most defiant people to ever wrestle. He was one of the rockers. He was one of those guys. Like he was bucking the trend before there was a trend because when he started, it was all about big guys. It was all about
Hmm.
beating each other up, and he was the high flyer with Marty Jannetty. He was always the guy who fought the system. And who is the system? He's defiant to the end. The system is the Undertaker.
Not only that, Shawn Michaels said in an interview saying it's the Heartbreak Kid. It's not the Feel Good Kid.
No.
And that's how he wanted to go out, with heartbreak, with one last act of defiance before the Undertaker finished him off.
Oh, well, yeah, he also didn't. He doesn't want to be pitied.
Hmm.
He wants Taker to end him.
And now Undertaker helps Shawn Michaels up, gives Shawn Michaels the big farewell to the WrestleMania crowd, and the Heartbreak Kid has left the building. As far as retirements go, where does this one rank up for you, at least in the wrestling sense?
It's up there. It's probably number 2 behind Taker. Well, the one where Taker leaves his stuff in the ring and walks out
And then came back.
and then came back. But wrestling, it's what they do. They try to create these moments and then they immediately go, never mind. Like Ric Flair's is sad. It is. When he fights Michaels and Michaels is crying and Flair's like, come on. Come on. That's sad. Taker's is the final juggernaut. So he's like he is the last of the old guard, and him retiring is just that last like thing. This is probably still I actually this probably is my saddest one. This probably would be my number 1.
Wow.
Retirement match, retirement period. Because honestly, other than Taker, I can't think of another one that really A had this perfect build to it. B made 100% sense. And you have two of the greatest of all time going for it. I do want to bring up there's a line in the first HBK Undertaker feud, and Undertaker says it. And it's where sometimes you have to go through hell to get to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And if you encapsulate both these matches, both these builds into one big thing, that's what Michaels does. He goes through hell to get to heaven.
I never thought about that. Wow. Years after this happens, there's a WWE event called Crown Jewel. And it's the Brothers of Destruction, Kane and The Undertaker, against D-Generation X, Triple H, and a newly returned Shawn Michaels. Now, does this return soil this match?
No, it doesn't. Because what you have to think about, especially with Crown Jewel, because there's so much money being funneled into those shows, like I almost give WWE a pass for anything that happens on the show, like the Greatest Royal Rumble, the Crown Jewel, because they have so much money and these guys want these big time matches that are crazy, like the Brothers of Destruction versus DX, like the 40-man Royal Rumble that means nothing.
50.
Oh yeah, 50. Sorry.
The 40 was canon.
Yeah, sorry. But
Like,
like,
and that's what I say. Like, these shows, like, at least in the beginning, were non-canon for a while.
so you almost like, okay, I understand. WWE is still a business. Like, as much as you want to go, oh, the story. No, they're a business. Saudi Arabia is paying them probably billions of dollars to put on those shows. They're gonna do things like have DX reunite to fight the Brothers of Destruction, even though both teams are clearly not the same anymore.
And Triple H tears his pec during the match, too, and then it just kind of goes off the rails. And for that to be the last image of Shawn Michaels in a wrestling ring, again, I don't really consider that canon to the
No.
Shawn Michaels career. I always will and still believe that his career finished and ended at WrestleMania 26. Does the Crown Jewel match is his last match, but his final match of his career was WrestleMania 26 in my eyes.
Yeah. Could I see Michaels coming back and doing like one more little feud? I'm sure it wouldn't be out of the question, but it'd have to be the right feud if you were ever going to do something else with him. I don't know who it would be, though. Could it be AJ Styles? That would be fun, but Michaels isn't the same wrestler anymore. As you said, WrestleMania 26 was it.
All right, Scott. Final thoughts on Shawn Michaels Undertaker 2.
You can watch both these matches on YouTube now. If you have an hour, watch them back to back. They're still great to watch. These two are legends. If you have a top 10 list and you don't have these two wrestlers in your top 10 list, you're insane. For A, what they've done for the business, and B, for the longevity of their careers, and they're two of the greatest wrestlers of all time. Honestly, it's great to watch again. I'm glad, even though you're like, oh, let's do Rock Austin 3, I'm glad we chose this one.
Same here. I love Rock Austin 3. We're probably going to have a Hurricane episode when we're going to have you on, and it's going to be fabulous. But this story is probably the greatest finale piece of somebody's career and a way to tie up the greatest in-ring performer of a generation with him tragically wanting this match, thinking he could win, but in the end It doesn't even matter. Linkin Park is a great band.
That is true.
What I would recommend from this story, watch the placebo running up that hill match hype video package. That is, if you don't want to watch the matches because it's a half hour, I can understand that. Watch the hype video package first, and then let's see if that changes your mind. All right, Scott, where can we find you?
I'm at Scotty May Know, but I don't post it there as frequently as I used to. If you want to talk to me, I'm also at Shoot the Flick. That's mine and my wife's podcast. We have it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and pretty much anywhere else you can find the podcast. We release every Wednesday. Also on Instagram is at Shoot the Flick. Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for this lovely off the rails episode of Wrestling Retold and Relived. Always a pleasure having Scotty Sequel on with me. I'm sure when he comes back, we're going to cover another sequel,
I'm sure.
but that's okay because we like sequels here.
Indeed.
So, once again, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Retold Richie Mars. You can follow me on the TikTok at One True Richie. And again, podcasts are available every Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and much more. So I'll see you all again on the flip side. TTFN, ta ta for now. Take care.